back at you one more time. Hey, I'm a little groggy, so you might have to take the lead on this. Went to. Have you ever been to Snapdragon Stadium? Where they're
Snapdragon. No.
It's where Qualcomm Stadium used to be, and it's where they have the new pro soccer team in San Diego.
Oh.
So a friend of mine got box seat tickets and all that for free. So we went down there. So we probably had a little bit too good of a time last night. So I'm still recovering.
Well, the funny thing is I've never been to Snapdragon Stadium, but I have been to Qualcomm, which is, of course, like you say, is no longer there. So, I've been to that area stadium.
Right.
I'm just so old at this point. I predate all
I
the
know.
stadiums in the area.
I
So there you
know.
go.
Yeah. Well, what was kind of cool about it, I'm not a big soccer person, but it's kind of like baseball for me. It's one of those games that kind of just keeps going and going and going. And it's more of a social event
Yeah.
than really a sporting event for me. So anyways, but what was interesting, and we actually talked about this on our way back, was going back to bringing this all the way around to the political piece is what was really amazing about it is how multicultural soccer is in particular, and a great place maybe to kind of bring people together is either through sports of some form or music. I mean, people have the same kind of feel for music. A lot of times music crosses political boundaries and stuff. And I was like, well, that got me thinking about the whole Elon Musk thing we were talking about last week. It's like, well, because I haven't heard a whole lot since, the announcement. It's like, I don't know what's happening with Elon, but maybe there's some sports related thing we could get people to focus on, to bring people together, to talk about the whole, way we have to fix this whole political system. So anyways, because it was really interesting, because everybody's just having a great time coming from all facets of life. And, we need more of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've always felt for a long time, and I was watching a little bit of the baseball All-Star Game recently too, and this thought sort of reoccurred to me, which is occurred to me over many years, is that if you really want to look at multiculturalism done right, look at professional baseball. So in the
Yeah.
All-Star Game, you had, I'm sure I'll miss some countries, but I know off the top of my head, Japan, Korea, Mexico, Dominican Republic, United States, obviously, Puerto Rico's involved. Obviously they're a territory,
Right.
but still count. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. Venezuela, El Salvador. All these countries
Right.
are represented in Major League Baseball, and every single one of the players that is there got there by merit. No matter how hard it was for them, or what it took, they achieved at the highest level, and by doing that, they received the opportunity to play in Major League Baseball. Oh, and let's not forget
Yeah.
Cuba. I'm always amazed when I see
Right.
Cuban players. Love seeing the Cuban players. It's awesome that they're got away from Cuba and got here to play professional baseball and stuff. So,
Yeah.
I've always felt like anti-discrimination is incredibly important, whereas DEI type things to me miss the point. If you
Right.
don't discriminate and opportunity exists, then you will get a multicultural, multi-ethnic, diverse group of people, because no one race or ethnicity or country has a monopoly on intellect or athleticism or anything else. But it has to be unfettered opportunity. And so when I see that in baseball or soccer or anywhere else, it's always like, that's how it's supposed to work. It doesn't matter
Right.
what color the players are, or where they're from, or the language they speak, or anything else. What matters is they're good at it. And
Right.
because it's an unfettered opportunity, there they all are. So I
Yeah.
always love to see things like that. Actually, I think it's a good reflection of how things, really should be.
Yeah, exactly. And as far as from a merit standpoint, again, I guess you can kind of reflect on that lots of different ways, because coming back to some of the immigration stuff going on right now, it's like, um, which I think we're going to start to see more of this as they're rounding people up kind of indiscriminately. It's like, I've talked to several who were in the Latino community, and they said people are just hiding, so it's like, and as a result, they can't get people into their restaurant to help in their restaurants and all that. And we've talked about this a bunch of times. that's it's a dual-edged sword, right? It's like
Right.
the reason why they're working the farm fields and they're in the back of the restaurant and all that is because they're basically being abused for what they're doing, right? In terms of they're lot lower costs, they're not getting any kind of benefits and all these kinds of things. But the flip side is other people aren't willing to do the work,
Yeah. Well,
right? So
here's
it's really very complicated.
yeah, but there's another aspect to that that is sort of grates on me, and I think about it, and I feel like I have to say it. So for the longest time during the course of my life, and I lived through the Reagan amnesty and things like that. So obviously we go back thinking about these kind of things for a pretty
Yep.
long way. Um, there was always this sort of idea that's like, well, yeah, there are people in this country and they came here legally, and but they're working hard and they're part of the community, and the more we enfranchise people, the better, and we can sort of like work around some of these problems. But I honestly believe that when the Biden administration let in 20 some odd million people, everybody just sort of took a step back and looked at what was going on in places like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and all these places, and the amount of money. And like Karen Bass, for instance, saying that she's going to give cash to people who are in hiding because they're afraid of ICE, and so
Right.
that's taxpayer money now. And everybody's just sort of like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute.
Wait.
Okay,
Right.
somewhere along the line we crossed over the Rubicon, and it's like now it's too many
Yeah.
people. It's too much. It's too uncontrolled. There's too many people around. There's too many people we don't know who they are or where they came from or what's going on. And as far as like, how do you integrate this number of people into your society? How do you pay for, the healthcare or the housing or the transportation or the education or any of the other things that
Yeah.
you want to do when it's this many people? And so the thing that you're seeing now, I think, is the reaction to what the Biden administration did, because everybody was just
Oh
like,
yeah.
no, it can't work like this anymore. We got to start all over again. Everybody's got to go out. Nobody else can come across for a while. And then, after that has had a period of time, to sort of settle down, maybe we can talk about playing nice again. But as long as people are in this, there's just too many people that we can't deal with. And I
Yeah.
remember during parts of the Biden administration, people talking about how people in the community couldn't go use a park because it was being used for a refugee center. And now you've got like Chicago is $1 billion in debt or something. Los Angeles is $1 billion in debt.
Yeah.
We've talked about the billions of
California.
dollars on the in the Medicare side on California. That's so much. It's like it's and we've said this on the show a million times. It's like a numbers game. But once it gets to be like 20 million people coming across in 4 years, everyone's just like, no, sorry, it can't. We just can't keep doing this. And so
Yeah.
you get this reflexive, change to the other direction. I think that's what we're seeing now. So it's like, yeah, I get the idea that people are uncomfortable or scared, but I mean, we had 20 years where we could have dealt with some of this stuff, and instead, Biden just decided he was going to blow the border up, and yeah, now everyone's up in arms, and nobody's willing to just to sit around and say, okay, well, I guess we'll just keep amnestying and amnestying and amnestying and amnestying until, I mean,
Right.
to what end and when? So I mean, it's one
Right.
of those things where it's
Well,
like you killed the golden goose. Let's put it that way. The Biden administration killed the golden goose of people's goodwill.
right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and all of it is reactions to reactions to reactions because GOP and the Democrats, either one of them, won't just address the issue
Yeah.
correctly. We keep dealing with these extremes, and we have these big pendulum swings back and forth because the whole Biden thing happened as a result of Trump's first term, where he tried to crack down on this kind of stuff and putting kids in cages and all that kind of stuff. And so it just keeps going instead of just trying to figure out a way to solve the problem. And that's what neither one of them are doing. I mean, the fact that LA and Chicago and folks like that are trying to respond through, hey, let's support people in hiding with cash. That's
I
going
mean,
that's going all the way the other direction. It's like I mean I understand the concept of being empathetic to what their situation is because you don't want people starving and stuff, but at the same time, it's just adding fuel to the fire, and they won't. Neither side will stop uh, going for the extremes, and that's the sad part. And all the more reason why we bring it back around on the third party stuff. Something to that extent, it was interesting. I was right before this. Saw a thing pop up about some lawsuit out of Florida where they've ruled that there was at one point I believe nine congressional. Florida has 28 congressional districts in total. Um, Eight are Democrat and 20 are Republican. And you could do this math in California, but the reverse of this, right?
Mhm.
And uh, and the court ruled this one district that's Democrat, um, or was actually gerrymandered, so it's not Democrat anymore, can stand for the midterms. And so, again, it's this whole gerrymandering thing, and so I went and looked at, okay, well, what is the percentage of Democrats versus Republicans in Florida? And basically, it's very similar to, I think we see lots of places, 41% GOP, 31% Dems.
Yeah.
Minor parties are 3%, but no affiliation is 25%. And so if you actually got rid of gerrymandering somehow and really dealt with, hey, let's just divide this up in a grid and how things fall the way they fall, independents theoretically should have 7 seats.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
The unfortunate part about that is the independents are scattered everywhere, right?
right.
They're not
Well,
necessarily concentrated in one area.
it's kind of the chicken and the egg argument. It's like
Yeah,
what has to come first. So if you want to get new parties, it would be helpful not to have gerrymandering. But the only way to get rid of the gerrymandering is has new parties who don't necessarily benefit
right,
from the gerrymandering.
exactly.
And so it's really
That's right.
complicated. So I mean that's where the difficulty comes in. But it's also why I've always supported more parties. Again, it's
Right.
another one of these things where it's so easy to do tit for tat when you only have two parties, right? This person reacts to this, who reacts to this, who reacts to this. But if you have another party that isn't one of those two entities, it's not so easy anymore. It's like, think about if you had to gerrymander districts around 3 or 4 parties rather than 2. Well, that would
Exactly.
be a heck of a lot more difficult. So one good
Yeah.
way to handle the gerrymandering problem would be to have more political parties. But
Right.
again, to get to the political party stuff, you have to, make some kind of inroads.
Right.
And that actually brings me to sort of the thing that I was thinking about, because I went back and I looked at the Reform Party again. And I'm always going back to check up on what the Reform Party is doing, because again, I was originally in the Reform Party. That was, back in the
Right.
90s. And so they have a really good website, and they support candidates, and they have some really good ideas. And I think they do there's a lot of things. They're talking about getting their social media presence greater. So there's a lot of good things about the Reform Party still, and I still like the Reform Party, and frankly support them. Glad that they still exist. But the thing is, when
Right.
was the last time you heard anything at all from the Reform Party? I mean, they're
Right.
like gone. They just vanished. And so that got me thinking about the whole America Party, which is now
Right.
Elon is trying to do. And going back to the whole double-edged sword thing, it's like, I get that we don't want this to be a cult of personality. And
Yep.
my dear Elon message for the day is, don't be a candidate.
Right.
Help fund other candidates, try and attract people to the party that have good ideas, and sort of support the ideas. And my slogan for the party was going to be, let's see, it's transparency, responsibility, and now my brain is not working, so I can't think of what the third one is, but I will at some point. But anyway,
Right.
the idea of thinking is that, you have some principles and you have some people that, efficiency, transparency, efficiency, responsibility. And
Yeah.
so you can create the party that way, but you really do need a media focal point. You need someone to bring
Yeah.
attention, because it's like, it's so easy for the new party to just vanish. So you have to have somebody that's got some kind of staying power and enough media influence and enough visibility that it gets enough attention to get people to start electing people. Because if there
Right.
were actual Reform Party representatives in Congress, or this, in Senate, or maybe even judicial nominees or whoever, they would still be there and invisible enough that you'd realize, oh yeah, the Reform Party is still an ongoing concern, and they're still running candidates and they still have good ideas. But they've vanished so entirely that you
Right.
really don't know anything about them. You wouldn't
Right.
even know who to follow or look at unless you're somebody like me who's interested in third parties and actually goes out looking for them. And so that's the thing.
Right.
It's like, yeah, you don't necessarily want an Elon Musk because he's too polarizing, but you got to have something.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. And you would hope, and I think we both have probably had this fantasy over at some point, is that a lot of these independent parties would come together and truly create a
Yeah,
coalition. Because I don't think they're that far apart. I think, I mean, some of them are definitely kind of fringe things, but a lot of them are, relatively close in thought processes. And if they would come together and but again, it comes down to humans, right? And
yeah,
they have these turf battles over really inane things. You're it's the forest for the trees thing, and it's like, guys, just come together and where that's where the Elon thing is really interesting. The one thing I did hear about Elon Musk and the America Party is one of the issues he does have is the Doge project. I guess laid off a ton of people at the Federal Election Commission,
yeah.
and so his paperwork to get established is like in a black hole. So it's like, oops. So that's part of the reason why he can't get things going. Because I mean, I was listening to somebody else and they were saying, I mean, literally, if you wanted to create a national party from the get go, it would cost you billions of dollars these days because of
Well,
how entrenched it is, right? And then you put layer that as a hurdle, as well as all the crazy bureaucracy just trying to create a party. And I
yeah,
know you've kind of dug into some of this, and
yeah,
it's like it's no wonder it's so hard for a third party to exist.
yeah. The existence of a third party is entirely dependent on your ability to fund the party. Basically, you have to have a party organization, and it has to be
Yeah,
sufficiently funded, or the government doesn't recognize you as a party. So
right.
it's like, again, if you don't have the financial wherewithal to get it done, a lot of donors or a lot of individual wealth, you
Yeah, it's
can't
not
do
going to
it.
happen.
As I say, I've literally tried it, and I
Yeah,
can't do it.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. No, no, and that's where I keep going back and forth on that too. It's like, do you really need a party? And I do agree with you. You do need a central point or a central voice in some way to actually really get traction going. But the
yeah,
flip side of it too is if you could convince enough people just to truly vote and be independent, they would have enough swing to not even have a party. You wouldn't even need a party in theory,
yeah,
because if you had 10% who just said, and I go back to American Idol, it's like, hey, if we can get people to vote on American Idol, why can't we get 10% of the people to say, hey, well, I'm going to just basically be the spoiler vote, and this is how we're all going to vote together to spoil the chances of XYZ just because they are not responding to the voters, you
yeah,
know? So I don't know which one's harder, trying to round up 10% of the people just like cats or trying to find one person who can actually pull this off.
yeah.
And we're kind of betwixt and between, and
But I would
there's
actually
no
say
difference.
that there is empirical evidence to show which route is better. The biggest accumulation of independent voters that I've seen in my lifetime is when the Reform Party was in its prime. There's never been an independent candidate that, at least in my lifetime, that was able to garner the percentage of the vote, uh, and even like before Perot's second run, which was a disaster because
Right.
Perot has nothing. You could blame a lot of the things that happened to the Reform Party on Perot. He was like leading in some polls, and then he
Yeah.
dropped out.
Yeah.
And then he had a lot of support. And then when he came back into the race, everyone was like, well, he was there, and then he dropped out, and now he's back. And it's like, I don't have faith
Yeah.
in
A
it
little
anymore.
flaky. Right.
Yeah. And so, but the thing is, he actually had support. There was because there was a guiding star. You know, that was allowed people to coalesce around that, and he actually got a sizable percentage of the votes. I still think he ended up with 19% of the vote or something. If he'd gotten to
Right.
20,
Right.
it would have been huge. He would have gotten like matching funds and stuff. But he torpedoed his own party. So all
Yeah.
we have to do is, not do that. But the sort of diffuse idea that you can get a bunch of people to come together around a set of amorphous ideas that nobody really appreciates or understands. That's just herding cats. It's never going to work. You have to have somebody there that says,
I know.
this is the thing, and this is what we're trying to do. This is why we're trying to do it. And if we do it, these are the kind of results that we can get. And if you actually can sort of talk about those things in concrete terms that people understand, then I think there's a much greater chance of actually getting something to happen. But again, you got to have
Yeah.
somebody who's got a loud enough voice that when you start talking about those things, people actually hear them. In a way, I think you and I are kind of like a perfect example of some of these things. It's like, I do this podcast because, I've been talking about third parties for so long and I just got sick of screaming into the wind. So I decided to scream into the internet instead. Now, whether or not that's actually going to make any kind of difference, I don't know. But
Right.
I have a slightly bigger voice now than I had before. But
Right.
I fully recognize that my voice at this point is not big enough to garner the
Right.
kind of coalition that we're going to need to make this work. So my hope is that my voice gets heard by somebody who will relay what we're talking about onto somebody who will then relay it onto Musk. So that's
Right.
kind of my game, because that's what I can do. But I mean, you got to have that big voice, and it can't be a constantly changing voice over and over again.
Right.
Because like the first time that Perot ran, everyone's kind of like, I don't know, could be
Right.
something,
Right. Right.
and and he did all right. But during the second campaign, as I say, there were polls where he was leading, and it was like,
Yes, I
we
remember
know who
that.
this person is. We saw him last year. The things he said was, actually are more were right, more or less. He actually had a good point, and now he's back. So now maybe it's time to get around him and do something. Then he drops out.
Yeah.
So
I know. I know. It was crazy. So crazy. Well, the going back to the Musk thing, the one place where I have thought a little bit about it, that he might be able to help get that traction, assuming he's not going to be the candidate. If he's thinking presidential, I guess technically he couldn't even run for president,
hmm,
anyways, right? Because he isn't a natural
native
born
born,
citizen.
not a native born citizen.
Yeah, yeah, and so so that's really not even in the cards for him. But maybe, and I say this somewhat with I don't know if it's a tongue in cheek or with ambivalence or whatever, but he does have the ear. Musk has the ear of Joe Rogan,
Hmm.
who has a
Yeah.
huge platform and
Yep.
who arguably probably swayed the election, this last one for Trump. And when I've heard him talk a little bit about that, I think he was really persuaded by Trump mainly because Harris wouldn't agree to be interviewed by him.
Yeah, I think
It
there's
pissed
something to
him
that.
off.
Yeah, I think there's
and
something to that.
and so it's like, okay, well, so there you go. Again, the Democrats, they lost the election. It wasn't Trump won it. They just truly lost the election for themselves because of their kind of dumb approach on stuff. But I do say that with some ambivalence, because also Joe Rogan, I mean, to his credit, he'll talk to anybody about anything, which I think is kind of cool. But he'll get some people on there sometimes. Not that I listen to him that often, but he'll get some really far out kinds of things going on there.
Yeah,
But if you're truly a free speech person, assuming it's not hurtful in some way, and you're like trying to say, hey, Nazis are great, kind of thing, and let's build a Nazi party, and I don't ever get the sense he's doing that kind of thing, but he does have some pretty fringy people at times.
yeah.
but
Well, I
but
was going to
that's what draws people to his show.
But I was also going to say that, I think there are like two categories of loony beliefs. The loony beliefs that actually matter and have an impact on
Right.
everybody, and the kind of loony beliefs that, don't necessarily matter all that
Yeah.
much.
Right.
Like if you think communism is a good idea, that's the kind of thing that's really bad for people. And so I
Right.
would never vote for someone who thought that communism was a good
Right.
idea because
Right. Right.
we've seen historically and we just basically know for a
Yeah.
fact at this point that it's not. But I
Right.
always used to have fun with this because I was a biology major in college. I used to tell people that the theory of evolution doesn't actually matter for anything that we learn. It's meaningless. You might as well not believe in it at all. And in fact, you know what? I'll just say that I don't believe in evolution, and it would just drive people nuts because But it was fun, and then you have to go. It's
Yeah.
like, well,
Right.
why does evolution matter for medicine? Well, like mostly for medicine, you're learning about chemistry and you're learning about biophysiology and you're learning about a whole bunch of other different things. And it's like, well, I mean, our understanding of why, for instance, a vaccine works or antibiotics work or whatever isn't really based on evolution. So,
No.
like, if I came out and said I'm running for president and I don't believe in evolution, a lot of people would think I was crazy. But at the end of the
Right.
day, would it really
It really
matter
doesn't
all that
matter.
much? So I mean,
No.
if you want to have people on your show and you want to talk about Bigfoot and you want to talk about aliens and you want to do all these things, I mean,
Whatever.
it's fun to talk about. I mean, why not? It's a gas.
Yeah. Right.
People a real hoot, and so
Yeah.
that's fine. Now, if you're gonna get on a show and talk about how I don't know Marx really had it right,
Right.
well, that's a different story.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And so I mean that's could be an interesting combination. I think Joe Rogan tries to, the sense I get anyways, he tries to stay fairly independent in terms of his thought. He's,
Yeah,
uh, and he really, I mean, people during the last election were kind of saying he was this Trumper and had all these crazy conservative ideas and all these kinds of things. But really, when you listen to him, he's very liberal,
yeah,
very liberal,
yeah,
and so because but then people automatically dismiss him on I'm talking about the left, automatically dismiss him because he's very pro gun rights.
yeah.
That's just his belief. He says, "Hey, I don't know what and the one thing I really appreciate that he talked about one time, he was talking about people complaining about hunters, and because he does bow hunting,
Yeah,
and all that, and his whole premise was, hey, as long as you eat meat, you can't say anything about what I do because at least the animals I'm killing, they are living free and they're running around and it's just by sheer luck that I see them. And but you move that over to factory farms of animals being slaughtered by the thousands and thousands, that's what's wrong if you're gonna weigh the differences here. And I mean I kind of agreed with that. It's like, hey, at least they're running around wild and free until such time somebody happens to catch up with them, you know, compared to, the pigs that are in a cage right now.
well, I mean, it's funny. Like almost everything has a counter argument that you can make. So you could say that the pigs in the pen are not really part of the natural ecosystem that we're trying to
Right.
preserve. And when hunters with overmatched technology kill the prime examples of a species that are the most reproductive and the most genetically fit, then we're damaging the ecosystem
Yep.
whereas the pigs are just raised for slaughter. So I mean,
Yeah.
you can always make a counter argument for things. There are lots and lots of complications with any argument, and it's all a
Right.
lot of things are about nuance and about information. But that's where the party comes in too. Is just to go back to that. It's like if you have a party and the party has a platform and a list of ideas, and what the party really stands for is pretty well spelled out, then if you got a Joe Rogan and he's into, talking about aliens or likes hunting or whatever, you can sort of like match that up with like, well, but he's also saying that he's representing this party and these are the priorities that they're pushing for, and none of that has anything to do with bow hunting or aliens.
Right.
And so
Right.
the party in a way it's almost like armor, and that's the
Right.
last week on the episode. That's what I was saying, talking about issues like abortion and the social safety net. If you get out in front of those issues and you have a platform that says, that clearly states your position on those things, that's the armor. And that's why you want
Yep.
party, because everybody says, and I'll go back to something that you said about, putting kids in cages, because there's a really interesting story on that you know I heard about at the time, and I think it's fascinating. So everybody was complaining about how Trump was putting kids in cages, and they were running these fundraising ads and putting things on the internet.
Hmm.
And the photos that they were using for those commercials were from the Obama administration of kids in cages during the
There were examples of that. Yep.
right.
I
So
remember
he
that.
was
Yeah.
like the deporter in chief. So you can take any issue that if you're willing to
Absolutely.
be dishonest about it, especially, and you can throw it onto anyone. So that's why you need the party. You say, okay, they say that I'm for putting kids in cages, but here's our actual immigration policy. If you actually care, if you're actually interested, and you actually want to make things better, go look at what we're actually saying and don't just listen to the lies. And
Yeah.
another thing that I think would be great about having someone like Joe Rogan, because he did it really, really well when it came to the hydrochloroquine stuff, where they were trying to
Right.
say that he was taking horse medicine.
Right.
You need to be able to go up into the media's face and say, this is a lie. And a lot of the reason that he became a Trump supporter was because of that. And I think part of the reason that the media lost as much of its respect, that people had for it, was because he just went out there and said, "Look, this is just a straight out lie. Here's a clip of somebody lying. Here's a clip of somebody lying." And so you kind of need that, swagger to get the message out,
Yeah.
because eventually one of the things that has to happen is there has to be enough people showing the media lying enough times that you can really just look people in the eye and say, here's all the times that they lied to you. Why do you still believe them? And it goes
Right.
back to the immigration thing. It's like, the media is telling us that, the Trump administration is a bunch of fascists. Well, they also told us that Biden was cognizant. They also gave us the Russia bullshit. They gave us the bullshit about vaccines and everything else. You know, they fed us all these lies for all these years. So now when you come to me and you say, "Oh, well, the ICE is a bunch of fascists," I'm kind of like, I've heard that lie so many times now that I'm just not interested. And that's why I say
Right.
about going back to the going over the cliff with the 20 million people. It's like, I know that there's millions of people in the country. Maybe I don't know exactly how many millions, but that in and of itself is a problem. And I'm tired of being lied to, and I'm tired about hearing about these lies coming from the media about law enforcement and how they all need to be defunded. And it's like, I'm just done with the whole thing. So you hear
Right.
horror stories about people being afraid to go to restaurants or get out or socialize or whatever, and you're just kind of like, for the love of all
Yeah.
that's holy, we just need to like put a stop to some of this. And I would say, I can only say it so many times, and I just wonder how many people will ever listen. If we had more parties, it would be easier to have more information about what's actually going on, and you could make better decisions. If you had a party that over the years, instead of proving itself to be a bunch of liars like the Republicans and the Democrats, it proved itself to be a party that generally told the truth about things and really looked for solutions, then you could go to their
Right.
information system and be like, I can actually trust some of this. I mean, my God, wouldn't that be a great thing?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it would have the cooling effect that everybody needs to experience now. It's like, can we just chill out on the whole name calling and all
Yeah,
this hyperness, regardless of the issue? Because to your point, every issue you can tell a different story.
yeah,
And let's get down into, okay, let's take everything on both sides. We take all that for granted. So what are we going to do about it? Yeah, I mean, we
yeah,
can't get to that conversation. It's like, let's get to the conversation. I don't care what the issue is, whether it's immigration or whatever. Let's figure this out, because it's nobody's winning. I mean, the only people that are winning are, the private organization, political organizations. They're making a
all
boatload of
done.
money, and all the lawyers behind them.
Yeah,
I mean, because everybody's just suing everybody now.
yeah,
It's like, what's the point?
yeah. But if you can start breaking down sort of the political and media edifice that
Yep.
gets in the way of everything else, even if it's not with a party, but it's with like small voices like ours or big voices like Rogan's. Once you start to break down this, and people start to have some incredulity and they start to question,
Yep.
that's when you really have a space for something new to come along that's better. Because as long as everybody sort of believes the talking point from from one of the two sides, that seats them firmly in those camps. So
Totally.
you have to start breaking away the camps so that people can come out and get involved with something, that's sort of more rational. And, again, I always say go back to the third party, because I mean, to me, I think that's
Yeah.
the best solution. But, I'm open to the idea that something else might happen. I just haven't seen it.
Right. Well, so I guess maybe we'll expand this to not only a note to Musk, but to Joe Rogan now.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
we'll just keep expanding the number of people that need to hear this and have them hopefully hear it somehow, some way, and start addressing the issues. Because I mean, obviously there's a lot of sentiment out there that people are just sick and
Yeah,
tired of being
yeah,
sick and tired. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
The,
anyways, we certainly are.
yeah, the voters are out there, and that's why when
Yeah.
I think I said this last week, that California should be the epicenter
Yep.
for the America Party, because there are so many disinfected people here that are upset, and not just that there are a large percentage of people, but California is a huge population. This is
Yeah.
where the people are. If you can start
Exactly.
moving things in California, then you can
Yep.
move things in the rest of the country.
Yep. Totally agree. All right. Well, we better end it there. And because next Thursday is going to be here before you know it.
Oh my God, yeah.
So I
You
need
know,
to go get rested up.
the thing that surprises me the most, this is just an inescapable conclusion that I've reached, because I've just seen it so many times. It's like every time there's a Wednesday, then there's a Thursday right after it. And it's like it's right there. You can't get away from it.
Tell me about it. All right. Well, I think I need a nap now. So
There you go.